Sam Cooke's voice was pure soul, but the man himself wrestled with two worlds. His journey between sacred and profane led to a life, and a death, that still defies understanding. In the cold, damp pre-dawn hours of December 11, 1964, 3 sharp gunshots shattered the uneasy silence of South Figueroa Street in Los Angeles, cutting down one of the most magnificent voices in human history. Inside the cramped, dimly lit manager's office of the down-market Hacienda Motel, Sam Cooke, the universally adored King of Soul, collapsed onto the linoleum floor, bleeding profusely from a devastating chest wound. How did a global superstar, celebrated for his peerless elegance and profound cultural influence, end up dying in a cheap, $6 a night motel room miles away from his affluent life? Within minutes, the first police cruisers arrived at the scene, their flashing red lights reflecting off the gritty pavement, but the official narrative that quickly began to take shape only deepens the horrific mystery. The woman who pulled the trigger was Bertha Franklin, the motel's fiercely protective night manager, who claimed she shot the legendary singer in absolute self-defense during a violent, unprovoked assault. Beside her stood another terrified woman, 22-year-old Elisa, who alleged that Cooke had abducted her from an upscale restaurant and held her captive inside his motel room with the clear intent of assault. Yet, as the medical personnel pronounced the legendary artist dead at the scene, those who arrived to inspect the body immediately noticed that the entire environment felt entirely wrong. Sam Cooke was wearing nothing but a sports jacket over his shoulders and a single shoe, his vast wealth, expensive sports car, and iconic charisma completely reduced to a sordid, seemingly manufactured crime scene. From the very first hours, the official investigators appeared remarkably eager to accept this wild story at face value, treating the tragic loss of a cultural titan as a routine, open-and-shut case of a celebrity crossing a dangerous line. But for those who knew the sophisticated, intensely private man behind the music, the pieces of this lethal puzzle simply refused to click together, leaving a dark and enduring question that still haunts the annals of American music history. Was Sam Cooke truly the architect of his own destruction, or was he lured into a meticulously designed trap from which he was never meant to escape alive? To comprehend the sheer magnitude of the shockwaves that rippled across the globe upon the news of his death, one must understand exactly who Sam Cooke was to the millions of people who adored him. He was not merely a pop star with a string of catchy hits, he was the undisputed king of soul, a musical architect who pioneered an entire genre by seamlessly blending the ecstatic fervor of black gospel music with the smooth, irresistible melodies of secular pop. His voice was an instrument of pure, unadulterated grace, vibrant, effortless, and capable of moving an entire generation to tears or to the dance floor with equal ease. By 1964, he had achieved a level of crossover success that was practically unprecedented for an African-American artist in a deeply segregated nation, scoring dozens of top 40 hits that became the definitive soundtrack of mid-century American life. When Sam walked into a room, he carried the unmistakable aura of royalty, commanding absolute respect from Hollywood executives, civil rights leaders, and working-class citizens alike. This immense cultural capital meant that his sudden, violent demise was not just a tragic tabloid headline, it was a direct assault on the collective consciousness of a community that viewed him as a beacon of ultimate success and unfiltered black excellence. His records were played in millions of homes across the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, bridging deep cultural divides during an era of profound social upheaval and civil rights activism. For a man of such immense stature to be discarded so casually in a seedy motel room was an insult to his legacy that his fans flatly refused to tolerate. The sheer contrast between the pristine, suit-and-tie image he projected on television screens and the sordid details broadcast by the Los Angeles Police Department created an immediate, agonizing cognitive dissonance that fueled deep suspicions. As the public clamored for answers, they began to realize that the loss of Sam Cooke meant the silencing of a vital cultural voice, raising the stakes of the investigation from a local criminal inquiry to a matter of profound national significance, leaving millions to wonder what the true cost of his immense success had ultimately been. Beneath the dazzling smile and the silky vocal delivery lay the mind of a brilliantly shrewd, fiercely independent business tycoon who was quietly revolutionizing the entire structure of the music industry. Sam Cooke had done what very few black artists of his era, and indeed, few artists of any race, had ever managed to achieve. He seized absolute control of his own creative and financial destiny. After walking away from a lucrative career as the star of the legendary gospel group The Soul Stirrers, he conquered the pop charts and immediately weaponized his success by founding his own record label, SAR Records, and his own publishing company, Cags Music. This meant that he owned his own master recordings and retained the lucrative publishing rights to his songs, a level of financial independence that deeply unnerved the powerful, predominantly white-controlled major record corporations of the era. He was not a passive pawn to be exploited by predatory managers or compromised contracts. He understood the intricate mechanics of royalties, distribution networks, and copyright laws with an expert precision. Furthermore, Sam was a deeply committed and active supporter of the civil rights movement, utilizing his immense wealth and immense influence to fund activist organizations and forging close personal friendships with radical changemakers like Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and football star Jim Brown. He refused to perform for segregated audiences, using his massive leverage to force Southern venue promoters to integrate their seating long before federal laws mandated it. This unique combination of immense wealth, absolute financial autonomy, and unapologetic political consciousness made him an incredibly formidable and potentially dangerous figure to the conservative establishment of 1960s America. He was a black man who could not be bought, intimidated, or easily controlled, proving that artistic genius could be successfully translated into real, tangible institutional power. This unprecedented independence begs an incredibly unsettling question: did Sam Cooke's bold defiance of the music industry's established racial and financial hierarchy transform him into a prime target for those who sought to maintain absolute control over the highly lucrative cultural landscape? The final chapter of Sam Cooke's life began on the evening of Thursday, December 10, 1964, amidst the glittering, high-stakes social scene of Hollywood. Sam spent the early part of the night dining at Martoni's, an incredibly popular, upscale Italian restaurant located on Cahuenga Boulevard that served as the primary gathering spot for the music industry's elite, including top-tier producers, mob-connected executives, and mainstream celebrities. Witnesses inside the restaurant later recalled that Sam appeared to be in an exceptionally buoyant, celebratory mood, holding court at a prominent table and generously buying drinks for acquaintances. Crucially, multiple observers noted that he was carrying a remarkably large sum of cash, thousands of dollars packed tightly into a distinct, thick wad, which he openly displayed while paying his substantial bar tab. It was during this high-energy evening that Sam was introduced to 22-year-old Elisa, a beautiful, enigmatic young woman who frequented the Hollywood nightlife scene. The two quickly struck up a lively conversation, and as the night progressed, they decided to leave the crowded restaurant together to continue their evening in a more private setting. They made a brief stop at a nearby trendy lounge called PJ's, a nightclub known for its diverse clientele and late-night energy, where they were seen drinking and laughing together, appearing to all outward observers as a glamorous couple enjoying a classic Hollywood night out. Yet, beneath this veneer of casual celebration, a dangerous undercurrent was rapidly developing. Sam was an incredibly famous, wealthy man flashing a small fortune in cash in the presence of a complete stranger, completely exposed in the dark hours of the Los Angeles night. As they finally exited the club and climbed into Sam's luxurious, high-performance Ferrari sports car around 2 o'clock in the morning, the stage was set for a terrifying descent into chaos, leaving researchers to question whether this chance encounter was a genuine accident or the deliberate initiation of a well-coordinated sting. When Sam Cooke turned the ignition of his powerful sports car and pulled away from the neon glow of Hollywood, he did not head toward his own comfortable, secure home or an upscale hotel matching his immense social status. Instead, he drove several miles south, deep into a gritty, economically depressed section of Los Angeles, ultimately pulling into the gravel parking lot of the Hacienda Motel on South Figueroa Street. The Hacienda was a notorious, low-rent establishment, widely known to local law enforcement as a frequent haven for illicit encounters, quick turnover rentals, and shadow world transactions, a place entirely unsuited for a global celebrity of Sam's renown. Why would a man who could easily afford the finest penthouse suites in Beverly Hills willingly choose to check into a $6 a night transient motel in a dangerous neighborhood? According to the statement later provided to the police by Elisa Boyer, she had repeatedly asked Sam to take her home to her apartment, but he allegedly ignored her pleas, driving erratically and insisting that they find a quiet place to be alone. Boyer claimed she felt completely trapped inside the fast-moving sports car, unable to escape as Sam navigated the dark, unfamiliar streets of the city. However, the registration records of the motel tell a subtly different and far more confusing story. Upon arriving at the Hacienda around 3 in the morning, Sam did not attempt to hide his identity or sneak into a room. He walked directly up to the manager's desk and checked in under his own real name, explicitly paying for the room in advance. This public act of registration sharply contradicts the image of a man attempting to perpetrate a clandestine, forcible abduction in the dead of night. Did Sam choose this specific, isolated location because he felt safe in the anonymity of the city's underbelly, or was he actively steered toward this particular trap by a companion who knew exactly what awaited him within those stucco walls? The moment the door to room 112 clicked shut behind them, the atmosphere inside the small, sparsely furnished motel space allegedly deteriorated into a scene of intense panic and confrontation. According to Elisa Boyer's official testimony, the polite, charismatic facade of the superstar vanished instantly, replaced by an aggressive, highly dangerous individual who was determined to force himself upon her. She claimed that Sam immediately pushed her onto the bed and began violently tearing at her clothing, ignoring her vocal protests and desperate struggles to break free from his powerful grip. Boyer testified that she realized her only hope of survival was to wait for a moment of distraction, mapping out a desperate plan of escape as the situation grew increasingly dire. She claimed that when Sam briefly stepped away from the bed into the adjacent bathroom, she seized the opportunity, frantically gathering her own discarded clothes from the floor and sprinting out into the cool night air. However, in her immense haste and panic, Boyer made a highly unusual and deeply critical mistake. She didn't just grab her own garments, she also scooped up the vast majority of Sam's clothing, including his trousers, his shirt, his wallet containing his identification, and the massive wad of cash he had been flashing earlier that evening. She left the King of Soul stranded in the dark room, stripped of his clothes, his money, and his means of communication. This specific detail has long troubled independent investigators. If a woman is fleeing a violent, terrifying assault in fear for her life, why would she take the time to deliberately gather the heavy, tangled clothes of her attacker? Was this a genuine, panicked accident born of sheer survival instinct, or was it a cold, calculated financial extraction designed to strip the target of his power and set a chaotic sequence of events into motion? After fleeing the confines of room 112 with Sam Cooke's clothes and cash clutched tightly to her chest, Elisa Boyer's actions took an even more perplexing turn. Instead of immediately running to the brightly lit manager's office just a few yards away to report a violent attempted assault, or screaming for assistance in the motel courtyard, she ran past the office entirely and fled out onto the dark expanse of Figueroa Street. She claimed she ran until she felt safe from pursuit, eventually stopping at a public telephone booth located several blocks away from the motel property. From this dark booth, Boyer did not call the police emergency line to report that America's biggest soul singer had tried to assault her. Instead, she dialed her own apartment, speaking to a friend before finally calling the operator to request assistance. This significant delay in contacting law enforcement remains a glaring anomaly in the official timeline of that fateful morning. Meanwhile, back inside the motel room, Sam Cooke emerged from the bathroom to find himself entirely alone, systematically stripped of his clothing, his identification, and his substantial funds. For a man of his immense pride and fame, the realization that he had been completely cleaned out in a seedy motel must have triggered an explosive wave of adrenaline and absolute fury. Realizing he had no clothes, he hastily threw on his sports jacket and a single shoe, rushing out into the parking lot to locate the woman who had just robbed him. He did not see her on the street, and his gaze naturally shifted toward the only source of light and authority on the property, the manager's office. He was a wealthy, powerful superstar who had been compromised, and he was determined to get his property back, entirely unaware that his aggressive search for justice was walking him directly into the path of a lethal confrontation. Inside the manager's office, 55-year-old Bertha Franklin was passing the quiet hours of her night shift when a furious pounding erupted on the heavy wooden door. Standing outside in the dim light was Sam Cooke, half-naked, visibly agitated, and demanding to know the whereabouts of the young woman who had checked in with him. Franklin later testified that she refused to open the door, instructing the angry guest to leave the area, but Cooke, entirely consumed by rage and convinced that the management was complicit in the theft of his property, violently forced his way inside, breaking the lock mechanism. What followed was a chaotic, physical struggle between the aging night manager and the athletic young singer. Franklin claimed that Cooke grabbed her by the arms, shaking her violently and demanding his money back, while she desperately fought to break free from his grip. During the melee, the two tumbled across the office floor, crashing into desks and overturning furniture in a desperate struggle for dominance. Franklin alleged that she managed to grab a heavy broom handle, striking Cooke across the head in a futile attempt to subdue him, but the blow only seemed to enrage him further. Fearing for her absolute life as the powerful man lunged at her once again, Franklin reached into a nearby desk drawer where the motel owner kept a loaded .22 caliber pistol for security. She leveled the weapon at the superstar and pulled the trigger 3 times in rapid succession, the deafening cracks of the firearm echoing through the small office space and instantly altering the course of musical history. 2 of the bullets missed completely, embedding themselves deep into the wall boards, but the third struck Sam Cooke squarely in the chest, piercing his vital organs and causing him to stumble backward, gasping his final words, "Lady, you shot me." The response of the Los Angeles legal establishment to the killing of Sam Cooke was characterized by an almost breathtaking speed, closing the book on the tragedy before a shocked public could even fully process the news. Within a mere 3 days of the shooting, a formal coroner's inquest was convened to officially determine the legal nature of his death. The proceedings were remarkably brief, lasting only a single day, with the testimony heavily dominated by the narratives provided by Bertha Franklin and Elisa Boyer. The star singer's defense attorney, directly hired by his devastated family, was severely restricted in his ability to cross-examine the witnesses or introduce alternative forensic evidence, as the inquest was technically an administrative hearing rather than a full criminal trial. After a very short period of deliberation, the 7-person coroner's jury returned a unanimous verdict of justifiable homicide, completely clearing Bertha Franklin of any legal wrongdoing and validating her claim of self-defense. The city authorities immediately accepted this finding, officially ruling that Sam Cooke was the sole aggressor who had brought about his own violent death through a reckless campaign of abduction and assault. To the mainstream press and the conservative elements of the city, the case was successfully resolved, a tragic story of a celebrity who allowed his wealth and desires to lead him into a dark place where his fame could not protect him from the consequences of his actions. The official files were stamped as closed, and the police department appeared entirely satisfied to let the matter rest forever, but outside the courthouse, an angry, deeply skeptical crowd was growing, refusing to accept that the King of Soul's life could be summarized so cleanly by a rushed administrative panel. When independent investigators and legal scholars began to meticulously dissect the official transcripts of the coroner's inquest years later, glaring inconsistencies and logical leaps within Elisa Boyer's testimony began to surface. Boyer had claimed under oath that she was forcibly held against her will inside the Ferrari, yet multiple witnesses at Martoni's and PJ's explicitly stated that she appeared to be a completely willing, active participant in the evening's festivities, showing absolutely no signs of distress or fear. Furthermore, her explanation for why she fled the motel room carrying Sam's entire wardrobe, including his trousers, keys, and wallet, strained basic human credulity. If her primary motive was a desperate escape from a violent sexual predator, the act of pausing to gather the heavy, bulky personal property of her attacker represents an incredibly counterintuitive survival strategy. More troubling still was the discovery that Boyer had a history of frequenting high-end clubs to meet wealthy men, a pattern that led many to suspect she was operating as a professional party girl or a lure for a sophisticated extortion ring. The police department completely failed to look into whether Boyer had any pre-existing connections to Bertha Franklin or the owners of the Hacienda Motel, a critical line of inquiry that could have revealed a coordinated setup. Her delayed call to the police from the distant phone booth suggested to skeptics that she was taking the time to confer with an accomplice or hide the substantial cash she had just taken from the room. Why did the detectives on the case so readily gloss over these glaring red flags, choosing instead to build their entire case around the uncorroborated word of a deeply compromised witness while ignoring basic rules of criminal investigation? The physical condition of Sam Cooke's body, as documented in the preliminary autopsy reports and observed by those who prepared him for his funeral, presented an even more terrifying challenge to the official story. When his close friend and legendary singer Etta James viewed Sam's body at the mortuary, she was completely horrified by what she saw, later publicly stating that the injuries were far too extensive to have been inflicted by a single elderly woman wielding a broom handle. James noted that Sam's hands were severely bruised, his knuckles broken as if he had been locked in a ferocious, life-or-death fistfight with multiple powerful adversaries. His head showed signs of massive blunt force trauma, with his nose broken and a deep, severe laceration across his scalp that appeared to have been caused by a heavy iron pipe or a weapon far more lethal than a standard wooden broom. These severe injuries suggested that the King of Soul had been subjected to a brutal, systematic beating before he was ever shot, a detail that was completely omitted or heavily downplayed in the medical examiner's public summary. Furthermore, the angle of the fatal bullet wound indicated a trajectory that raised serious forensic questions about whether the shooter was standing directly in front of him as Bertha Franklin claimed, or if he was shot while already incapacitated on the floor. The sheer scale of the physical devastation visited upon his body strongly pointed toward a violent, coordinated assault by several individuals, transforming the motel office from a scene of self-defense into what appeared to be a professional execution site. Why did the coroner's report fail to adequately explain these extensive, severe pre-mortem injuries, and what were the authorities attempting to hide by rushing the body to burial before an independent autopsy could be performed by the family's private experts? The sheer velocity at which the Los Angeles Police Department handled the entire investigation stands as a monument to either historical incompetence or deliberate obstruction. Standard homicide protocols dictate that a crime scene involving a high-profile national celebrity should be meticulously preserved for weeks, with forensic teams gathering fingerprint data, analyzing blood spatter patterns, and tracing every potential lead. Instead, the LAPD released the crime scene at the Hacienda Motel within less than 24 hours of the shooting, allowing the management to thoroughly clean room 112 and the manager's office, permanently erasing any vital physical evidence that could have contradicted the official story. Detectives failed to interview the guests occupying adjacent rooms on the night of the shooting, missing a critical opportunity to gather independent ear-witness accounts regarding the number of voices heard during the struggle or the exact timing of the shots. No formal ballistic testing was performed to match the bullet recovered from Cooke's body with the specific weapon produced by Bertha Franklin, an omission that defies basic investigative standards. The police records reveal that the primary investigators took minimal notes, conducted perfunctory interviews, and closed their notebooks the moment the coroner's jury delivered its verdict. This aggressive rush to judgment completely insulated the city from a deeper probe, leaving a wealth of unanswered questions about the true timeline of events. For a department that was already facing severe criticism from the civil rights community for institutional bias and corruption, the casual handling of Sam Cooke's death felt to many like a deliberate attempt to sweep a potentially explosive scandal under the rug as quickly as possible, leaving a grieving community to wonder who truly held the power to stop a murder investigation in its tracks. From the moment they received the devastating news, Sam Cooke's family, his closest musical colleagues, and his fiercely loyal fan base flatly refused to accept the sordid narrative presented by the authorities. His wife, Barbara, along with his brothers and managers, publicly declared that the official story was a complete fabrication that ran entirely counter to Sam's true character and lifestyle. They knew him as a deeply sophisticated, cautious man who was hyper-aware of his public image and who possessed absolutely no history of violence or predatory behavior. When his body was brought to Chicago for a public viewing, over 200,000 grief-stricken fans lined the cold winter streets for blocks, waiting for hours to catch a final glimpse of their fallen hero and expressing their collective outrage over his treatment. The atmosphere inside the church was electric, with a potent mix of profound sorrow and righteous anger, with prominent civil rights leaders openly calling for a federal investigation into the killing. Musicians like Ray Charles and Lou Rawls openly questioned the logistics of the motel shooting, arguing that a man of Sam's wealth and intelligence would never have willingly put himself in such a vulnerable, low-rent situation unless he was under extreme duress or completely deceived. The family hired private investigators to dig into the backgrounds of Elisa Boyer and Bertha Franklin, uncovering a web of suspicious connections that the police had completely ignored. This collective stance of defiance transformed Sam Cooke's death from a standard celebrity tragedy into a rallying cry for justice, solidifying a deep conviction within the black community that the official truth was nothing more than a carefully engineered lie designed to assassinate his character after taking his life. As independent researchers began filling the gaps left by the official investigation, a highly plausible alternative theory emerged. Sam Cooke was the victim of a sophisticated, highly organized extortion ring or a robbery trap gone horribly wrong. Proponents of this theory argue that Sam was deliberately targeted at Martoni's restaurant because of his immense wealth and his visible habit of carrying large sums of cash. It is hypothesized that Elisa Boyer was deployed as a specific lure, tasked with intoxicating the singer and guiding him to a prearranged, isolated location, the Hacienda Motel, where a team of muscle was already waiting in the shadows to rob him. According to this narrative, once inside room 112, the situation escalated into an intense physical struggle when Sam realized he was being set up and fiercely fought back, defying his attackers with a ferocity they had not anticipated. The severe injuries to his hands and head were likely inflicted during this brutal, multi-man melee as they attempted to subdue him and strip him of his funds. When the robbery turned lethal, the perpetrators were forced to concoct an immediate, desperate cover story to avoid first-degree murder charges, utilizing Bertha Franklin and Elisa Boyer to spin a narrative of justifiable homicide that would appeal to the prejudices of the era. This theory perfectly explains the stolen clothes, the missing cash, the extensive bruising on his body, and the pristine, staged nature of the crime scene. It reframes the King of Soul not as a reckless predator, but as a brave man who stood his ground against a ruthless criminal syndicate, losing his life in a desperate defense of his dignity and his hard-earned wealth. Beyond the theory of a simple street-level robbery lies a far more sinister and vast hypothesis that connects Sam Cooke's death directly to his revolutionary business maneuvers within the music industry. There are those who firmly believe that Sam was targeted for termination by powerful corporate forces or mob-connected executives who viewed his absolute financial independence and his burgeoning record label as a direct existential threat to their lucrative monopolies. By owning his own masters and publishing rights, Sam was setting a dangerous precedent that other top-tier black artists were preparing to follow, a movement that would have cost the major record empires hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue. Furthermore, his close ties to the radical wings of the civil rights movement and his ability to leverage his wealth for political change made him a target of high-level interest for federal intelligence programs like CNTLPR, which actively sought to neutralize powerful black figures who could galvanize the masses. In this dark view, the encounter at Martoni's was not a random coincidence, but a highly coordinated contract hit disguised as a sordid personal scandal, designed to simultaneously eliminate a dangerous economic rebel and completely destroy his pristine public reputation. The vanishing of his financial ledger and current business contracts from his car on the night of his death strongly suggests that his killers were hunting for more than just the cash in his pockets. They were systematically dismantling his corporate empire. This chilling theory places Sam Cooke among the earliest casualties of a shadow war for the control of American cultural expression, leaving a haunting question about the true price of total artistic autonomy in a system designed to exploit the creator. The subsequent trajectory of Elisa Boyer's life in the years following the grand tragedy did very little to dispel the dark clouds of suspicion surrounding her involvement in the death of Sam Cooke. Far from fading quietly into anonymity, Boyer repeatedly found herself entangled with law enforcement, establishing a clear criminal record that directly challenged the image of the innocent, terrified victim she had presented to the coroner's jury in 1964. In 1979, 15 years after the fateful events at the Hacienda Motel, Boyer was arrested and subsequently convicted of second-degree murder in connection with the killing of another man during a violent domestic and financial dispute. This shocking conviction demonstrated a clear, chilling capacity for extreme violence and involvement in lethal altercations, leading many true crime researchers to view her past testimony through a far more critical lens. Her later brushes with the law included arrests for prostitution, grand theft, and drug offenses, painting a grim portrait of an individual deeply embedded within the criminal underworld for her entire adult life. For those who had always doubted her account of that night with Sam Cooke, her subsequent criminal history served as a powerful, validating piece of circumstantial evidence, proving that she was a highly dangerous, manipulative operative who was fully capable of complicity in a lethal conspiracy. It raised the terrifying probability that the state's primary witness against the King of Soul was a career criminal whose entire testimony had been a perjury-laced performance engineered to protect herself and her hidden handlers from the gas chamber, leaving her as a deeply haunting figure who carried the true secrets of Room 112 to her own grave. In a twist of supreme, heartbreaking irony, the true immortal legacy of Sam Cooke was solidified just a few weeks after his body was laid to rest, with the release of his final masterpiece, A Change Is Gonna Come. Inspired by his own bitter experiences with racism on the road and the profound eloquence of Bob Dylan's protest music, Sam had written the song in early 1964, but he had hesitated to release it, fearing it was too political and might alienate his mainstream pop audience. The track was a complete departure from his previous light-hearted hits, a sweeping, majestic composition propelled by a soaring orchestral arrangement and a vocal delivery that hummed with the collective pain, resilience, and unyielding hope of an entire generation of oppressed people. When the record finally hit the airwaves posthumously in late December 1964, it was instantly recognized as a profound cultural masterpiece, rapidly becoming the definitive, sacred anthem of the civil rights movement. Civil rights workers marched into battle with Sam's soaring voice ringing in their ears, his words offering a transcendent promise of eventual victory over the forces of darkness and bigotry. The song transformed the fallen pop star into a permanent secular saint, ensuring that his creative spirit would continue to fight for the very freedom and dignity that had been so brutally stripped from him in his final hours. It stands as an incredibly poignant monument to what the world lost on that December night. A brilliant artist who was just beginning to realize the full, revolutionary power of his creative voice, leaving behind an anthem that continues to echo through the decades as a reminder of a promise unfulfilled. More than 6 decades after the gunshots faded into the fabric of the Los Angeles night, the true nature of Sam Cooke's death remains one of the most agonizing, fiercely debated mysteries in the history of global popular culture. The official verdict of justifiable homicide stands as the legal truth, a pristine bureaucratic stamp that attempts to close a chapter that millions of people across the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada recognize as fundamentally incomplete. Was he truly a magnificent king who suffered a tragic, self-inflicted fall from grace in a moment of reckless abandon, or was he a brave, fiercely independent visionary who was cold-bloodedly executed by a system that could neither buy his soul nor control his immense power? The physical anomalies, the missing fortune, the fractured testimonies, and the convenient, aggressive rush to judgment all point toward a truth far more complex and darker than the official file allows. As long as his music continues to play in millions of homes and his anthem of change continues to inspire those who fight against injustice, the quest for the true story of his final hours remains alive, refusing to be buried by the passage of time. Sam Cooke gave the world a voice of pure, unadulterated light, but the circumstances of his departure left a lingering, deep shadow over the entire landscape of American music, a reminder that for the icons who dare to truly own their destiny, the truth is often the most dangerous song of all, leaving an archive that remains forever vanished, and a melody that remains forever unresolved. Before you go, here's the thing. Every week we investigate another mystery the world could never solve. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And here's the most important part. The next case we investigate could be yours. Tell us in the comments which unsolved mystery, disappearance, or disaster we should cover next. We read every suggestion, and the stories that stay with you are the ones we bring to life.